afternoon, fellow Democratic women. As you heard, my name is Miriam Amanda Wallace. I was born June 13, 1875. I hope I don't look that old. My parents are Joseph Lapsley Wallace and Eliza Garrison. They were considered upper middle class. Papa made his money in cotton, cattle, and land, and I loved pretty clothes. Papa always ordered fine silks for me from France to have them made into dresses. I was called the Belle of Belton. I grew up on our farm in Sparks, but Papa and Mama considered education a necessity for their children, so I attended Salado College and then was transferred to Mary Hardin Baylor Female College in Belton. While shopping in downtown Belton one afternoon, I saw the handsomest man I'd ever laid eyes on. I determined to find out who he was. It was James E. Ferguson, and it wasn't long before he determined to get to know me. Soon he was calling on me at my home, and he asked me to marry him. I told him no. I was not ready to leave my papa in my home where I was so happy. Jim asked me to marry him again, and again I said no. So then when it came to call, he asked to see Papa, and the two of them sat and talked cattle and crops, and I sat there by myself. I didn't much like that, so I would work to get his attention, and it wasn't long after that that we got married. That was December 31st, 1899. Our wedding gift from Mama and Papa was a small honeymoon cottage on Penelope Street in Belton. Jim had passed the bar, and he opened his own law office, and our family started to grow. So we moved with our two daughters, Rita and Doris, to a large home on 7th and French Streets in Temple, where Jim founded the Temple State Bank. But the political bug had bitten him. He ran for governor in 1914 against Thomas Ball of Houston. Papa was also a flamboyant campaigner, snapping his galluses, and he seemed to have a backwoods demeanor, endearing himself to the voters, and he became known as Farmer Jim. He defeated Mr. Ball and became governor of Texas, so we moved from Temple to Austin the following year. In my day, the term of office for governor was 2 years. Don't you wish that was true today? So in 1916, Jim ran again, this time against Charles H. Morris, and he won again. It was during this time that the State Highway Commission was created, judicial reform began, the tick eradication program was started, and liberal provisions for education were made, and 8 new colleges were built during his term. A special session was held in 1917 to pass the free textbook law. New state buildings were built. Then Governor Jim demanded that the University of Texas Board of Regents fire 3 professors. The regents refused, whereupon Jim vetoed the university's appropriation. Although I urged him not to do this. Jim was then impeached on what I believe were trumped-up charges. Defiant, Jim filed for governor but got beat by William Hobby. In 1920, Jim filed for president of the United States just to keep his name before the public. By this time, our finances were in a mess, and my family farm was in danger of being lost, on top of which Jim's bank fails. Never daunted, he files for U.S. Senate, and he loses to Earl B. Mayfield. In 1924, Jim is forbidden by the Supreme Court to run for governor. After explaining it all to me and convincing me to allow it, Jim put my name on the ballot, and I defeated Felix D. Robertson, who was backed by the Ku Klux Klan. The people were really excited, and they marched down the street shouting, "Hoods off! Along the street there comes, patriotic daughters and loyal sons, a cloud of bonnets beneath the sky. Hoods off! Miriam Ferguson is passing by." As governor, I launched an economy program. With Jim at my side, I fight textbooks on evolution and work on highway building. In fact, in Temple, I had some streets paved with bricks laid over cottonseed hulls. They're still there. No holes are in that street. But it didn't work. I released 2,000. I tried to get the Amnesty Act passed for Jim. That didn't work. I released 2,000 prisoners and was strongly criticized for this. But these were persons held on minor charges of bootlegging. And it saved the state millions of dollars, not having to feed them and house them. Then a highway scandal broke out, so I left town. I went back to Temple to avoid an impeachment threat. So in 1926, I ran again, this time against Dan Moody. I lost, but I'm busy getting my new house on Windsor Road in Austin built, and it's ready to be moved into the next year. But things are bad all over. This is the outset of the Great Depression. Jim and I blamed on the businessmen and the millionaires. By now it's 1930, and once again, I decided to run for governor, and I announced my candidacy in Jim's little newspaper, Ferguson Forum. My opponent is Ross Sterling. He's a candidate for Big Oil, and he describes himself as the big fat boy from Buffalo Bayou. Well, I ran against him, and I lost in the primary. I won the primary, but I lost in the runoff. But I ran against him the following term, and this time I beat him good. He refused to attend my inauguration, but I have more to worry about than that. The state has a deficit of $4 million, and the Confederates fund is out of money. The state employees' salaries have been cut, and state banks are closed to celebrate Independence Week. But President Roosevelt closed the federal banks 2 days later. We passed the bread bond, and I asked for federal aid, and I get it, even though Mrs. Roosevelt gave a breakfast in Dallas and did not invite Jim or me. But there is some good news. In 1933, the 18th Amendment gets repealed. I did not file to run for another term, so my good friend C.C. Donald ran and lost. Jim and I retired with financial troubles, and we lost our Bell County farm. I'm grateful both our daughters are now married. Doris was a big help to me in every campaign, but I must tell you, the election I lost is when women's suffrage was the issue, and Jim spoke out against it. I did not, but I followed in his philosophical footsteps. As I said in a magazine article, I never fought for women's suffrage, but they made it the law. They gave us the ballot, and I see no reason why we should not exercise our right to vote. After 6 years of resting, I went on the campaign trail again. This time against W. Pappy Lee O'Daniel. He was nothing but a Yankee. With a fake Southern accent, beady black eyes, and a good voice for radio. When he campaigned with his band, known as the Light Crust Doughboys, there were several other candidates beside me, and I got beat. I had run my last race, but I always said it's not what we've done in the past. It's all the exciting things still to be done in the year ahead. In 1941, Jim and I helped defeat a young man running against O'Daniel for the Senate seat. Our friend, Coach Stevenson, was lieutenant governor, and we thought if Pappy won that race, Then Coke would move into the governor's spot, and Texas would be rid of Pappy. Well, it worked, and that was a defeat that Lyndon Johnson never forgot. He figured out how the race was won and made up his mind to always seek the help of the Fergusons in the future. Then one night, February 28, 1944, Jim suffered a stroke, and for seven months he remained an invalid, but I kept watch over him and never left his side. About the beginning of September, Jim seemed to be confused, and he began to talk erratically. He remembered the days on the farm outside Belton and the joy of winning that first election in 1914, and how angry the University of Texas students made him when they shouted insults at him under his office window at the Capitol. Then one day, he called out the name of Coach Stevenson, saying he wanted him to come see him. I called Coke, and I told him Jim was very low, and asked him to come see him. He responded that he heard Jim was out of his mind. I told him he was not so much out of his mind as you might think, and I hung up the phone. Doris was standing nearby, and I turned to her and I said, I'm going to put a knife in the throat of that snake-eyed old buzzard. Wait and see. After all we had done for him. Well, my husband died September 21, 1944. The Austin Bureau of the Dallas News, which had carried a love-hate relationship with him, gave him the most glorious compliment that was ever given by a Texas newspaper, saying that Jim Ferguson was matched in his influence on state politics, political history, only by Sam Houston. The funeral was dismal, anything but glorious. His friend Sam Sneed made the arrangements. He lamented that when Jim became governor of Texas, he was a rich man. He had $400,000 in cash back then, which was more today, 2,500 acres of black land, and a controlling interest in 10 banks, but he died a pauper. Some of his friends chipped in to pay for the funeral. There was a letter to the editor in the Houston Post stating that Jim was always for the underdog, and that was the reason he was made an open target by a flock of double-crossing friends when they saw the green light for their own good. But to me, he was my lover and constant companion of 44 years. I can almost hear his voice now around dinner time when he'd come home from the office and he'd call out, Miriam, and I would always answer, what's cooking? I would not let anyone see me cry. All I would say is he was the smartest man who ever lived. Coach Stevenson did not attend the funeral. He got in his pickup and drove off headed for Junction. But Congressman Lyndon Johnson was there in spite of his rigorous schedule and impending birth of their first child. He gave me one of his famous big bear hugs, wrapping one of those big arms around me, planting a wet kiss on my cheek, offering to do whatever I asked of him. His daddy, Sam Ely, had pitched in for us to get elected governor in 1924. It was nice on the part of the state to allow me to retain my office in the Capitol for a few more years. Senator Johnson kept in close touch, which pleased me. I liked the young man. He reminded me somewhat of Jim, and he believed in helping the poor people, the same as we did. One day, Lyndon called, asked me to run for governor again because he felt my name on the ballot would bring votes for him. I told him no, but I promised I'd help, and I did. When the campaign for Lyndon looked bleak, he was running against Coach Stevenson. Even though by this time I was 73 years old, I had 5,000 letters sent out on his behalf, having turned over to his staff my list of names and addresses of all the good Democrats. My daughters helped out too, contacting their friends in this letter. And in the letter, I acknowledged the grave mistake that was made by me in not supporting Lyndon Johnson before. For me, revenge was sweet when Lyndon won, defeating Coach Stevenson. I retired to my home on Windsor Road, but stayed interested in politics. Those who ran for governor who asked for my endorsement got it. John Connolly, Price Daniel, and Alan Shivers. Anything Lyndon asked me to do for him, I did it. On my 80th birthday, a big party was given for me by the mayor and city council of Austin, declaring June 13, 1955, Miriam A. Ferguson Day. Both houses passed resolutions honoring me. 300 guests attended, plus one very special guest, Lyndon Johnson, who had flown in accompanied by his mother Rebecca and his wife Lady Bird. He told the audience he owed everything to me and had traveled 600 miles to honor me and would travel 600 miles more. And true to form, when I rose to speak, I kept it short. I thanked everyone for coming and asked God to bless them and sat down. In my remaining years, my attention was centered on my grandson, Jim. He was with me at the very end. Before I died, I made sure it was seen to that although the University of Texas begged for the effects in the Ferguson estate, it all went to the Belton Museum in Belton, Texas. Miriam Amanda Wallace Ferguson passed away on June 25th, 1961. Thank you.